Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. I can't tell you how much we appreciate it because this evening is all about you and the questions you have and the feedback that you have. My name is Gary Anger. I'm the new interim superintendent of the Shakopee schools. I have to thank all of you for all the support that I've received so far as the in my new position. I can honestly tell you, it doesn't matter what school you represent or your kids go to, I've been there. And I've hit the classrooms, and there are amazing things going on in our Shakopee schools. And there's good news in the classrooms, and there's good problems that we have in the district. And changing boundaries is a problem, let's face it. Nobody wants their child to go to another school. Adjustments are hard for every single student, but we're growing. And this boundary adjustment is something that was a necessity and that we have to do because we need to balance out our elementary schools, balance out our middle schools so that we can provide as many opportunities for kids that we possibly can. You can't run an elementary school over capacity. It's really, really hard. I know, I lived it. I was principal at Red Pine Elementary in Egan when it was growing crazy in the Rosemont, Egan in Grove Heights area, and I was in a school with 960 kids, and the capacity was right around 780, I think. So we had kids in the hallways, and without classrooms, it was not good for learning. And so this is about learning, and tonight is the only topic we're going to talk about is boundaries. We've got amazing people up here that are parent volunteers that are going to be the only ones handling the questions and giving them to us. So let me talk a little bit about what the purpose is of our meeting tonight. It's to provide feedback to help me make recommendations to the school board about attendance areas and intra-district transfers. I want to make that point. That's really important. We feel like the plans that we have are going to give us some allowances to maybe let you say, you know what, I really want my kid to stay at this school. Can I drive him to this school? And I feel like, you know, those are things that we can definitely talk about. We're open to that. This is to provide the school board with information to make final decisions. We've got several of them here. They're not going to talk tonight. Their job is just to listen and to hear what you have to say. And every comment and question that comes up here will be collected, responded to if it's about the boundaries, and then we'll also, you know, give you feedback on any of them. If you've left and we get a message, we'll call you back on it and give you feedback on that. You can put your names on these, but you can also keep them anonymous. It's totally up to you, and you know, we have no preference either way. So again, this is about you asking questions and providing feedback. There may be feedback things and not questions, and we'll just read them so that you can hear them. I only get this one slide. Dave's going to present for 15 to 20 minutes, so I better speed up. And we really want to just get as much Q&A as possible. We want you to know the website is really vibrant. There's a ton of different things that you can do on there. So we welcome you to our district website, specifically the links on boundaries. You can put your address in and it'll show you what impact it'll have, you know, each of the plans. And I'm sure many of you have done that already by the number of hits we have. If you think of things afterwards, email us, call us. I'm really proud to say Dave has gotten back to every comment or email that anyone has sent. And if he hasn't, I have, and I double responded to some people, so we've got it back to everybody. Again, the logistics of tonight, many of you saw the maps out in the hallway. There will be people out there to answer your questions. If you need to leave early or anything, flag down one of our experts. They're kind of hovering around the back there. They'll try to answer your questions back there. If you don't have time, you want someone in person to answer a question. And we'll be available after the meeting. This is being videotaped, so we'll have other ways for people to see this. If somebody is working night shift, we'll take their comments. We've had a couple of those folks come forward to us. So I'm going to turn it over to Dave Orlowski, who's been heading up this long process that's been going on for a long time, well before I was here, to give you some background information and help you shape your questions. So here you go, Dave.
Thank you. And I'm Dave Orlowski, and I right now work in our district office as the data and testing administrator. And when this involved data, they thought it was a good idea for me to be involved in it. But some of you who have older kids might remember, I used to be the principal at Sweeney Elementary, and then I was the principal at the 6th grade center before it opened. And I also have taught high school, so I've worked with kids K-12. And I get this. People are here, and you can see we have over 8,000 kids in our district, which means lots of parents, and you guys are the ones who showed up. I get how much you care about what's happening with your kids. We know how much you love your schools, and I liked it when I was the principal and everybody loved the school that I was leading. And so we appreciate you coming here and giving your time tonight. The challenging thing is, while this is a very good thing that's happening for our district, this growth, and then opening up another school to alleviate the pressure that's in our buildings, the challenging thing is that that change means something difficult for a lot of people, and we get that. That's why you guys taking the time to be here tonight, and all the people that have emailed or called us are so important. And I'll talk more about the task force and the other parents that have helped us as well in just a bit. But what this does is it helps us get, and the board get, and the superintendent get, a broader perspective on what's happening, allowing us to then choose the plan that is best for the district in the long run going forward. So what you bring, you all bring a unique lens, your kids, your situation, that helps us. So whatever you've got, we would love to hear it here tonight. And the volunteers that we have with the bright green name tags on, their job will be to come up and down the aisles, give you a question card if you want one. If it's a follow-up on something we said, you can ask it. They will then bring the, so those, did you see those? Just turn around and look at those three back there if you could quick. They'll come around, raise your hand, they'll bring a card to you and a pen and a clipboard if you need one. They'll bring the questions to these other parent volunteers who will then sort through the questions with the goal of us asking as many as possible. So they will do that, and if it's a repeat question, they won't ask it again. If it seems slightly different, they will ask it just because we want to make sure we're not skipping someone's question. Okay? All right, here we go. All right, why are we here? Okay. We are here, and I'm going to go back in history a little bit. And before I do that, you can see up in the right way to use some abbreviations. Those are abbreviations for our elementary schools. And this is the elementary school boundaries from 2002-3 through 6-7. It's not a great picture, but this side is Sweeney. This side, this is the west side. The east side was Red Oak. And that shape, kind of that horseshoe kind of shape in the middle, that was Pearson at that time. Only 3 elementaries. There's my abbreviations, and they were only K-4 schools. Sunpath was a 5-6 at this time. And the district had about, in the spring coming into this year when Red Oak opened, there were 4,250 students in the district. Okay? In 2007-8, we did a lot of changes. We went to 5 elementary schools. We had Pearson, Red Oak, Sweeney, Sunpath, and Eagle Creek was new at that time. We converted the K-5s. And we grew, over those 5 years, about 1,500 kids. Oh, and I want to bring up this one. There's been some questions about contiguous versus non-contiguous attendance areas. So you'll see even back to here, you saw even in that other one, there's kind of an oddball shape. And you can see that here as well. That Sunpath is the, I know that's hard to read, but I wanted to blow it up. Sunpath is the yellow. Eagle Creek is that pink, or sorry, Red Oak is this purplish color up here. That light pinkish color is Eagle Creek. Sweeney over here on the west side is blue. Okay? And then we came to 11, 12, and the reason it says 11, 12, 13 is because there was one year where 11, 12, Jackson actually opened. Pearson was closed for a year, converted to a 6th grade center, then we changed our grade configuration in 12, 13. So actually the elementary boundaries that we have right now have been in place for, this will be the 7th year. Okay? In those 5 years, we grew another 1,500 kids. So over that 10-year period, we grew about 300 kids a year. And then this spring, we were up to about 8,300. That's another 5 years. That's 1,000 more kids. That's about 200 a year. So you can see some really substantial growth over that time. And if you go all the way back to the beginning, you'll see that we started with 3 elementary schools and around 4,200 kids. We're finishing it in the low 8,000s, and we're going to have 6 elementary schools. Not sure what the numbers are coming in for this year yet, but it's going to be in that neighborhood, probably up a little bit from there, okay? So it gives you an idea. We need more schools. There were a lot more kids. Okay. This discussion about making this change has been going on for quite a while. It actually started when I was the principal at the 6th grade center when it opened. So going into that planning, the original plan was the 6th grade center would only be there for 5 years. It actually turned out to be 6 years because of a little bit slower growth, I think, than anticipated. Maybe the referendum might have pushed that back a little bit as well. And this changing grade configuration. So we've been talking about this for a long time. Here's the current, this was last May. I pulled these numbers from here. You're going to get some numbers here, and I'm going to teach you how to start reading this very quick. This column is how many kids were in the school on May 17th. This is the capacity. This is the percent of capacity that school was. We'll talk more about this column in a little while. That's proposed new developments that are on the books right now if they were fully built out. And we used some multipliers and ratios to see how many kids we get from each type of housing unit. And then this is what the projected enrollment would be if fully built out at a percent of capacity. Okay? And this is actually posted online right now. If I'm going too fast, you could pull that up, or you can do it later as well. Okay. And I'll let you take a quick look at that, and I won't read that out to you. Bottom line is, this is a change that has to be made based on numbers. There will be about 500 kids at Pearson Elementary in 2018-19 that are not there right now. And I know while I say it's positive, if you're someone who might be moving, you might not feel that positive, but for the long-term benefit of our kids, I think that it is a positive move. This is the process that we've used so far. Okay, so there's more to come yet, but we've actually been at this for quite a while. Okay, this is just one other look at that. Starting at board meetings even last January, this discussion started taking place around the parameters that would be used to establish the boundaries. But we're actually the same ones that have been used all these other times Shakopee has done this work. Okay? You saw the task force you mentioned a couple different times, and that the volunteers that are helping us, they're all part of that task force that helped us craft what this message, what this session would look like, and helped us do a better job even looking at how the scenarios and other calculations. So we had a broad range of areas represented. These are all the people that were invited to participate. Okay. All right. We had some questions about how are you deciding, are we voting? And here's how, in this graphic, if you look at the top left, you're consultants. The whole community is consultants. The task force was consultants. The design was done by the board, the district office, and the superintendent. They are also the decision makers. So once we keep getting feedback via emails, via the task force, via sessions like this, via call-ins, however, we're trying to make this an iterative process. Once we make that decision, we'll start implementing. If new information comes, we won't just put our heads in the sand. As long as we can get more and better information, we'll be adjusting. But the key part is the board and the superintendent are the ones making the decision here. Your role is key as well. These are the criteria that have been used this time and in the past for Shakopee. I'm going to point out a couple that this number of students moved. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But looking at how long this is going to last, there's a reality. We are growing and we're going to continue growing. I don't know how fast it'll be. You never know when something's going to change. But this last set of boundaries or attendance areas lasted, just as I mentioned, the elementaries, it's 7 years they've been in place. The secondary, it's been 6 years because of that 6th grade center conversion. Okay. This is a heat map. Each one of those, this is using the elementary attendance areas as a backdrop. That's where the kids in our district live. There's 3,680 kids represented on this map. The light blue on the left is Jackson. The brown area is Sweeney. The dark green area is Eagle Creek. The red area in the middle is Sunpath, and that purple area is Red Oak. So you just get an idea. Each dot does not represent one child, but it gives you an idea of where the concentration of kids are. And I'm going to give you just one idea because there's going to be some questions about this. See where on the east side of our district where Eagle Creek and Red Oak are? That, if you circled that area right there, that's about 650 kids. The capacity of those two schools is just under 800 each. So there's space for 1,600 kids there, but only 650 actually live right there, okay? Oh, one other thing for reference, you'll see, let me try it. 169 kind of running right through the middle of this thing. I brought this thing and I always wanted to use one, so I'm going to, there's 169 running right through, so you get that idea. There's the Minnesota River over there, okay? All right, these are the, and I'll blow this up in just a second. You'll see a key down there for the colors. These are the developments that are on the books, and we had someone from the city of Shakopee there confirm this. There's actually one missing from here, and that's the city hall being converted to some new apartments, and that has a minor impact, but I made this map before we knew about that one, but we do know that's out there. Okay, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can read this better. Okay, so I'll let you take a quick look at that. Those are the developments with the estimated, these are guesses, but they're scientific guesses based on how many kids we typically get from a single family home, a townhome, or apartment. And depending on what type of apartment it is, it might be a different multiplier as well. And this is when they're fully built out. So it could take a number of years to get to that point. Okay, this is online as well. Okay. These are the junior high boundaries right now. And those, again, I have the little flags there for which the developments that are on the books. Okay? This is the feeder pattern. How do the elementaries feed into the junior high? And if you look and you see Red Oak, the purple, and Sunpath, the red, you'll see Red Oak and Sunpath feeding east right now. Okay, so you can kind of see that outline and how the maps work together. Okay, this is the part some people really like and some people don't. But I want you to know how to read this, so I'm going to step you through it, and I'm going to give you some time to dig into it a little bit. Okay, we talked about this already. First column is how many kids were there, capacity, percent full. This is just capacity minus how many kids there are, how many open seats. We have some minor intra-district transfer net gains or losses between buildings. This is that new development column. That's the projected, you saw this. And this is how many would be projected when they're fully built out. Then we started looking at the different categories of kids that would be in each of those buildings. FR means percentage of kids that are receiving free or reduced price lunch. SPED is special education, percentage of students that have an IEP, individual education plan. EL is percentage of kids that have a home language other than English, an English learner. This is a statistic to kind of get the relative need within a building, just adding those together. It could be a little misleading for those of you that are mathematicians out there because there could be a student that's in all of these. Okay, so it's not a pure percentage. All right, here's how you read the scenarios. This is the elementary scenario 1A. That's the current elementary attendance areas. This is the proposal for 1A. So you could get a comparison look at how it changes. If you like a little narrative with that, you can look over here, and I'm going to explain this. 1,071 out of 3,680 is how many kids would move if we didn't allow intra-district transfer to be grandfathered in. If we said, if we took the, I think it's 339 kids that are elementary students that take advantage of that right now for one reason or another, child care or preference or whatever it would be. it would be about 20% of the elementary kids that would be moving. So I subtracted those out. Know that when it says 732, it's a given. 500 are moving because Pearson Elementary is not going to open empty. So if you want to look at that as the marginal difference then, 500 versus 732, that would be another way to look at it. It doesn't change the fact that it's a change for those 700 kids. You subtract 500, it's still a change, but that just gives you an idea of how to think about it. This last part, these are the abbreviations again. This is what an attendance area is gaining. I didn't put what they're losing. So Eagle Creek would get what I call the sun path triangle. It's got nothing to do with the Bermuda Triangle or anything like that, but it just happened to be that shape, so I wanted to point that out. So that means this area right here, that triangular shape, used to be at sun path. In this scenario, it moves to Eagle Creek. They're getting something from Red Oak as well, students along Eagle Creek Boulevard. So right along here, some kids would be added to Eagle Creek. This is just what they're gaining, okay? And then the same exact thing for the junior high. There's the current junior high boundary, proposal, the moves quite a bit less, okay? And the elementary scenario that goes with that, and the feeder pattern. So there's a ton of information to deal with here. You have all this in your packets. I'm not going to step you through 2A and 2B, but I am. Well, there's the feeder pattern, which we talked about already. There's the statistics for 1A, which I already taught, is all in your packet. I taught you how to look at that, or showed you.
And again, those are in the hallway. We saw a lot of people utilizing the bigger views in the hallway, which is pretty helpful, and obviously in your packets too.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. If you prefer to ask your question by looking out there and talking to someone one-on-one, I do have some other some school principals that are willing to be out in the hall to take those questions if that's your preference. If you have a device and you can get online, and there is guest Wi-Fi in here, this presentation and all the scenarios are online. We also have handouts for you here. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stop for about 5 minutes, give you a chance to see any new questions that were generated. We'll get these up here to the volunteers, and they'll start posing the questions. Okay?
And since we have some questions already, we probably don't have to wait 5 minutes, but I think Dave needs a water break here. Again, our sincere thanks for being here, and don't be shy about any questions that you have. We'd definitely like to hear them. By the way, all 4 of our question readers here are all either current or past childcare providers, so they're really nimble and can handle anything coming at them.
This could also give you a couple minutes to flip through the scenarios if you haven't had a chance to do that already as well.
All right, are you guys okay to hear some questions rather than wait? All right, go ahead.
Okay. Will the principals remain at the same schools?
That's a Gary question. You know, assignment of principals is really the superintendent's job, and I guess unless there's a motivation for me to move principals, that is always what drives that. So really an impossible question to answer at this point. There's a likelihood that they would stay at their schools, but it's not definite.
What are the plans to convert Pearson back to an elementary school? What updates will be done?
Question is around updates to Pearson. And I am going to, if you don't mind, sorry, I see you back there. There's the, as Gary said, the most likely principal to be at Pearson, but not necessarily the principal. Kevin Bjerken is the principal there now. You want to just yell that out, Kevin?
Yep. So there's a few upgrades that are being looked at that have been in process for a while. One of them is the playground. Whenever you do improvements to a
Whenever you make any change to a playground facility, you're required to do updates. So it gets different kind of rock underneath, some swing things repaired, some of the plastics have some graffiti that all comes off, that sort of thing. So that's one thing. The second thing is you try to get your kindergarten rooms right within bathroom areas or real close to bathroom areas. Currently we have a band room that used to be 2 kindergarten rooms when Dave was there. So one side has a bathroom inside and the other side has a bathroom inside with coat closets too. So it's the ideal place for 2 kindergarten rooms. So one thing would be to rebuild, which was taken down for band, one wall that goes right down the center. And that allows you to have 2 bathrooms, 2 separate rooms, that sort of thing. Other things that are being looked at, some of the biggest things obviously are staffing and furniture. Getting kindergarten furniture versus 6th grade furniture is an extensive amount of stuff that has to be changed throughout. One other thing that's being looked at and kind of tossed around right now is the locker configuration is set up in 2 separate locker bays and there's combination of it. No 1st grader is going to be able to do that fancy combination. So, not a big deal for kindergartners because they have their own little coat room sort of right inside the rooms. But looking at a couple of possibilities with the lockers, and nothing has really been determined, it's all just discussion right now. One possibility is to get rid of the locks and remove them all and set them right outside the classroom so they're really close proximity to teachers, close proximity to kids, and they don't have to move around much to get at their materials. They don't get lost in 700 lockers. Another possibility is to do something more like, what is that, some of the newer schools like Jackson and Sunpath, Red Oak, is they have lockers right inside of their classrooms. They are just inside the door and they put them inside the classrooms for the convenience then again of kids being able to get help from teachers, staying all within kind of a small area of the school that becomes their home. And another bid that's being looked at a little bit is the possibility of actually replacing the old metal tin lockers with some of the newer style ones that are put in the other schools. So those are some of the basic things. Obviously, staffing is a huge thing. Who moves to Pearson will be a big kind of puzzle to work through, but those are some of the physical things that are being looked at.
So you may be wondering, how about anything that has a dollar sign attached to it with that process? That's my job. I'm already working with our finance department, and you'll see some communications coming out throughout the year about what I'm going to call a budget restructuring for this school district. It's very clear that many facets of our budget need to be restructured, so we'll be looking at every category to make sure that we can afford all these changes, and how do we right-size different parts of our district so that we can make all that happen.
You guys ready?
That's okay.
Have we considered creating a 5th grade center? Parents raved about what a great experience the 6th grade center. Why not change to 5th?
There was an elementary design team, elementary core team they went by, and that elementary core team looked at different options for what we might do with another elementary school. And they looked at a lot of different things, including making that school, say, a magnet school, like a Spanish immersion school or a STEM school or something like that. And time and again, it came back to people wanting that more traditional K-5 elementary school to make it like what we have in all our other buildings. So I think a lot of different possibilities were considered, but when we went to the 6th grade center, and I'll tell you, I was the principal there. Have you heard that already? I was the principal at the 6th grade center? Okay.
He's really bragging at it.
Yeah.
He did do a great job.
There was a lot of pushback in, you're adding a transition to my kids' lives. You're going, and we used to have it this way too. We were K4, then we were 5, 6, then we were 6, 7, 8. We've done all kinds of things. So when we go that way and add another transition, there's pushback on that too. When we went to the 6th grade center, another pushback was, you're bringing all these elementary kids together, they make friends, and then you're splitting them out again. They might not wind up at the same school as their friends again. So almost no matter what choice we make, there's some reason why it was good, and there's some reason why it wasn't good. So the short answer I can say is, all kinds of configurations were looked at. I can't say for sure. There might have been some very brief conversations about a fifth grade center, but I don't think it lasted very long.
And
Kevin, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit more about that as well. Right now, you'll see that Pearson is at 114% capacity, and as over the next 20 years, when you project the growth for Shakopee,
That number at 114 with fifth grade is going to get higher and higher and higher. So in order to do that and make it, you would end up making a big addition on the building because it doesn't have the capacity to maintain a fifth grade center any more than a sixth grade center. And the second side of that problem is not just building it on, but there's a ratio to the building size to the lot size. And my understanding is that I don't believe that you're allowed to build onto that building given the lot size that's right there. Unless you tear down a bunch of houses and take it over. You don't have the space.
And because that decision preceded my arrival to the district, I stayed away from it. But I will say, probably the most popular comment that people have had in their feedback relates to the number of transitions. So clearly, keeping that center adds that additional transition, which to me is arguably it's no doubt one of the biggest hot button issues for people. All right.
Another one related to Pearson. What protocols are in place to ensure that there will be a balance of experienced and novice teachers at Pearson as it is the new elementary school, both tenured and probationary?
That's a great question. Do you want to talk about what the past practice was a little bit, and then I'll...
You know what, it's a staffing. I'll talk about past practice, but then staffing, I'll have you do it. So I've been here through a number of those transitions. I actually started here in, was it Patrick, 4-5 or 3-4?
The Lord, I can't remember.
Okay, well, and what we have done in the past is, it has gone that way where we don't want to have a building that's just staffed with, like anything, you want a balanced staff, a balanced expertise, balanced experience, balanced interests, as much as possible. And you want to put together as strong a team as you can. And so that definitely will be what happens. And we want to give teachers some choice as well. So teachers will usually get some kind of choice around, they've actually filled out surveys a couple different times, I think, where they say, I want to work with this teammate, I want to be with this principal, I want to be in this school, I want to be an early or late start for family reasons. And they rank which is their highest priority, and we try to get people what they want, but the driving factor is really making sure we have a solid team there. And that's an important thing to know as well. I know people really are happy with their schools and their teachers. Probably and I say that backwards, they're really more happy with their teachers than the actual building that they're in. The teachers in the schools like Eagle Creek, which is over capacity, Jackson, which is well over capacity, those staffs aren't going to look the same either. A lot of those teachers are going to have to be the ones that move because those schools are going to be the ones that are impacted the most. So there will be an intentional effort to put a strong team together.
Yep, and in a little more succinct manner, exactly what I was going to say. It's about giving teachers some choice in the process, but also building the best teams that we can. And there's going to be a lot of that in the district this year, along with the academies, not just with the boundaries. So it's going to be a pre-K-12 issue for us this year.
Patrick Leonard is our principal at Sunpath, and he has something to add.
Just for past practice, when I became principal at Sunpath, it was going, similar to Pearson, it was going from a 5-6 building to a K-5. We had even a larger group of staff that year. And my building ended up very balanced from around the district. I had teachers from all different schools, different levels. Some been in the district longer than I had. Some have been right where I was. Some were newer. And then I also had the luxury of hiring a few there. So I think the elementary principals and whatever we come up with, I think will be a balance across the district.
Thank you.
Good.
In scenarios 1A and 2A, the neighborhood between Valley View / Independent / Mystic Lake would go to Pearson, while the neighborhood north of 4th, are you following me? would go to Sunpath. Why wouldn't those be switched around given close proximity to the other school?
Can you tell me that one more time again? So I want to make sure I understand. Read it.
Scenarios 1A and 2A,
So I'm looking at 1A.
and the neighborhood between Valley View / Independence / Mystic Lake.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's it, yes.
Right here?
Yes.
Okay, all right, I get it. So finish.
And why wouldn't those be switched around given close proximity to the other school?
So this one switched with,
They go to Pearson, while the neighborhood north of 4th would go to Sunpath. So why would they be switched?
North of Fourth is that green.
this one?
Yep.
Okay, so that gets at one of the criteria that we look at, and we saw some of those unique shaped attendance areas, is trying to make sure that our schools reflect what our community looks like. And when you start building these scenarios, you have the criteria. And an initial criteria when you start, you wipe the slate clean is, if you're within the walking distance of that school, half-mile for elementary kids, you go to that school. And when you draw that, what happens is you've all of a sudden got a large number of kids in that school just within that half-mile. Okay? Those kids then kind of create the baseline for what you're starting with, and then you're trying to create that, again, reflection of the community around. We have 60 plus languages in our district, our socioeconomic differences, our home language differences, our unique learners, special education differences, and trying to make those, like I showed in some of the statistics pages, trying to get those to reflect what all of Shakopee looks like. So that is how that happens. That's why you don't get that particular, you can't just draw the circle around it and get it that way. The other piece is, well here, I'll let you add to that, Gary.
Well, what I was going to say is an important factor to me, having gone through attendance boundary discussions and in other districts, in 2 other districts, and it's tough. But one thing that I like about the plans that we have are the overall capacity percentages that we come up with, because it gives us a little bit of flexibility to say, you know what, there still may be a way to give parents choice. And I don't think we put a slide up about, open enrollment or anything to that point, but go ahead and build on that.
I will talk about inter-district transfers in a second, but can you read me that question from start to finish one more time? I just want to make sure I don't shortchange that.
In scenarios 1A and 2A, the neighborhood between Valley View / Independence / Mystic Lake would go to Pearson, while the neighborhood north of 4th would go to Sunpath. Why wouldn't those be switched around given close proximity to the other school?
Okay. So I think the way I answered that with looking at our schools reflecting the community as a whole is really a driver in that case. All right. And you wanted me to talk a little bit more about, let me pop that up here.
You can pop it up, but go ahead and ask another question.
Are scenarios in preferential order?
That's a great question. They are not. There were numerous scenarios that were presented, and as a matter of fact, there was a conversation about do we knock it down to 2? Correct, committee? And the committee's decided let's keep it at 3 so we can see what people say about these 3 scenarios. But there were several other scenarios, and it came down to these 3 scenarios, but they're not put in preferential order.
Okay. So here's some of the discussion that we've had with the school board and with our attendance area task force. And I want to make sure there's no locked in thing here, but this was the current best thinking around intra-district transfers. And I want to be careful about that language because intra-district transfer is different than open enrollment. Open enrollment is somebody who doesn't live in District 720 and enrolls into our district. Intra-district transfer means I live in the Sweeney attendance area, but I attend Red Oak. A lot of times it's because of child care or some other reason. So here's what the board has said. They would like to allow as many as possible, subject to when we need to have it done in order to get our staffing right and the capacity of the building. You saw that there's going to be some flex, if whatever scenario you look at. If you look at the open seats initially, there's going to be room for those buildings to have some space, okay? So daycare requests. I live in Sweeney, I'll use that example again, but my child care is in Red Oak. How do you not say yes to that request? You're at work, your kid's in Red Oak, we're not sending a bus in there to bring them back to Sweeney. Those requests have always been approved, okay? We talked about another possibility, and I'm going to make up dates here, all right? So November happens, the board makes the decision on which scenario to go with, and you say, I really want to keep going where I was, this impacted me, and I'm willing to provide transportation. We say, making up dates, okay? Making up dates. June 1st, we take every request for an intra-district transfer, and we say, oh, that means this many kids would move from here to here, this many kids would move from here to here, this many in this grade level would move from here to here. The net works. We approve them. June 15th happens. We batch them again. We look and see, can it work? At some point, probably early July, you have to say, done, because we have to know how many kids are going to be in a school to staff that school. But the goal is, look, we know this is hard. This is not an easy thing we're doing, even though it's the right long-term thing to do. So we want to work with everybody, but there are some parameters that we just, at some point, you have to stop it.
And again, we've got some good fortune with these three plans because there is some capacity room in each of the scenarios. In other districts that I've worked in, the new plans came out where a building would be capped and there was no flexibility for a parent to say, you know what, my student's going into their last year at this school, can I drive them? We may have the good fortune to do that with these plans.
Question for Gary. When these boundaries were drawn, they were proposed by Rod Thompson. Do you stand by these proposals?
Well, I can say they were not drawn by Rod Thompson, and they were drawn by committee work and a lot of effort put in by a whole number of people. And so, just like anything else, I just want to publicly say we're moving forward as a district. So, thank you very much. And I'm really excited about what the future holds for this district. And so you won't hear me dwelling about the past very often. My job is to do the best job as a servant to all of you and your kids. And that's why I was in all the schools the first week. And that's why you're going to see me stand up and give you honest answers. And sometimes tell you news that's not so good. But I want you to know that my job is to move this district forward. I'm glad that was asked.
These two are sort of similar, so hopefully it doesn't get too lengthy, but the question is, Jackson is the only elementary school that uses the PBIS program. It is extra things like this that makes a huge difference and why we want to stay at Jackson. Jackson Pride. And a follow-up, somebody asked, will Pearson have PBIS standards in place? Will it have a cluster environment? This fares well for our students. Jackson is the only one in the district practicing this.
That's a great question. We don't have Doug here to answer that one, but I've been in previous PBIS districts too, and I'm a huge fan. And I know that each of our elementaries has already implemented many aspects of PBIS. They may not be an official PBIS site, but they have many aspects. It's almost like going to a PBIS school without it actually being labeled a PBIS school. And for those of you that don't know what PBIS is, it's about putting the focus on positive behavior for the kids. And I can say that, without a doubt, I think each of our elementary schools do that. But I also think, those principals are often pondering, hey, do we become an official PBIS school, or do we carry on with the positive behavioral pieces that we're doing now?
Historically, the Greenfield neighborhood has been impacted by school boundary changes. In the past 8 years, our neighborhood has sustained 3 school changes from Eagle Creek to Sun Path, and most recently Jackson. 2 of the 3 proposals now have our neighborhood assigned to Pearson. Is the number of previous moves considered in the proposed boundary changes, and which other neighborhoods have had 3 or more school changes in the past 8 years?
Okay, I want to show you a couple things, and then I want to make sure I understand which neighborhoods that is. Or neighborhoods that are, okay.
As you can tell, Dave is our neighborhood expert.
Okay, this is something we did, and I've had a lot of people actually look at this. That is an analysis of, it's not talking about a neighborhood per se right now. It's talking about students. So let me explain this one to you. Okay, this is our current students in Shakopee schools right now. So this kindergarten class that just started is the graduating class of 2030. The 12th grade class is the graduating class of 2017-18. Across the top, you're going to see all the attendance area changes as a result of growth within the district. Okay, that's what's across the top. So I'm not counting transition that normally would have happened. And if you think about transitions that normally would have happened, it would have been 5th to 6th, or yeah, 5th to the 6th grade center, 6th grade center to 7th grade, then you'd be there 7, 8, 9, then you'd transition to the high school. So there were some transitions already built in. This is talking about transitions that happened as a result of a redrawn attendance area, not natural grade breaks, okay? So, when Red Oak opened in 2002-03, the kids that were kindergartners there, they're gone. So that move impacted nobody in the system right now. Some houses changed, and actually that neighborhood that we're talking about, I think that was being built out at this time as well. So some houses changed, some houses didn't, but it didn't impact any kids. In 2007-08, when Eagle Creek opened, these kids are now, that was 10 years ago, right? Those kids are now juniors and seniors. They may have had a change from kindergarten to 1st grade or 1st to 2nd grade. Let's use the 11th graders right now. That's when Jackson opened, when they were going from 4th to 5th grade. They may have moved if they were in an attendance area impacted by Jackson opening. So that 11th grade group may have moved. So they had 2 district initiated, because of growth, transitions that weren't built in as part of the grade configuration. Current elementary kids in our whole district would not have had a change for 7 years. For 7 years, the attendance areas have been the same.
It's good to be a 5th or 6th grader in Shakopee, as you can tell by the graphic.
Yeah, and so when you look, like I'm thinking right now, this group of kids, everybody who's a K through 4 kid, they could be impacted. They might not be, there's those percentage of kids that are going to move. The vast majority of kids are not going to be impacted. But there's going to be a lot of kids that move, honestly. This group right here is a group that is the one that could experience that, at least on this time frame, a second district initiated transition. So I've looked, this was actually, I had not thought of this, and a lot of people were calling and emailing, and I said, I need to understand that better. What is actually going on here? And so I put this together, and it might, I think it's right. I've had enough people look at it and actually correct some things, but if there's something that's wrong on there that communicates who actually had that extra transition because of growth, I'll fix it. But right now, that's how I understand it. But with all that growth, like we talked about, going from 4,000 to 8,000 kids, essentially, there's gonna be change. And there are other neighborhoods, if you look at, and I did this as well, if you look at...
But again, it's really important to stress, not every kid was impacted in those years that got highlighted. There were certain neighborhoods. So yeah, there's a likelihood that some neighborhoods were impacted more than others, but you can see 5th and 6th graders have not experienced any of those changes. 7th grader, that's been the bummer year for the changes. And very natural to see that in other growing districts too. It's one of the tough things about being in a growing district.
And you can see that's going to happen, and there are other neighborhoods on here. When you only had 3 elementary schools in that first one, and you're going to 6, large chunks of the district changed. So that neighborhood has changed. That neighborhood was being built during some of that time, and I'm not trying to minimize that at all, but I tried to look at it really, how does it impact the kids in the district right now? It doesn't mean it's any easier. I totally get that. And if something's wrong on that, we want to know, but that's how we looked at it.
And one more thing to stress with those neighborhoods, again, we have to put together a plan for the entire district, not for a particular neighborhood. And so these plans are presented to meet the criteria that's set up there. And, we've had some invitations to meet in certain neighborhoods. It's not something we can really do, because if we meet in one neighborhood, we need to meet in every single neighborhood in the district. We need to follow a process and stick to the process. The great thing, again, about this process is it should give people, if you're an individual parent in that particular neighborhood, you don't want the change, you may very well have the ability to say, we're going to transport our kid to that school so we can stay there.
And if you're really into just saying, is there somebody else? And I did, actually, Mike could probably help me better, but up here, this area was Sweeney, then that area was Sunpath, then that area was Eagle Creek. So they've had a similar set of transitions initiated by district change attendance areas as that. It doesn't mean it's good, it's just that was the question around, are there other neighborhoods? And there's at least that one. I didn't do that kind of analysis across the whole map, but you get the idea.
All right, next question.
Which is more important, demographics or efficient transportation? I see demographics equal, but definitely some inefficient transportation. With our financial situation, we also need to note kids being bused across town. Why is Veerling, Eagle Creek, Marshall bordered area not going to Pearson?
Yeah. Again, a very good question. Obviously, transportation. There's costs involved with transportation. One good thing about these plans is we can have an even number of early and late start schools and run a pretty efficient process for transportation. While we may be transporting a little bit farther, our current contract is by pupil, by the number of kids that we actually transport. And so we're taking a look at, are we going to have to transport more kids under this plan? But really, having balanced schools and schools that we can be successful with our teachers and our kids is the driving factor. The most important thing that we can do in Shakopee is have the best possible schools that we can have. And sometimes, costs may be a little bit more expensive, but if we're doing our best to make our schools the best, that's our job.
And we did have on the task force, we had a representative of the bus company, and there wasn't, we asked her, are any of these wildly different than the other? And her answer was they aren't. They aren't wildly different from her perspective. So I'm not an expert on calculus. I don't know if somebody here did actually sent me a message that was very detailed about the percent, how many miles it changed and the percent change they were. Somebody tried to do some trick. You're here. Okay, tried to do some. I still want to talk to you more.
But it's, again, that's a big piece of our budgetary analysis that we're going to do this year. And every year we go out for a busing contract, and we need to run it as lean as we possibly can for the financial benefit of the district too.
Okay.
From the research I've conducted, all school board members chairing the attendance committee, which are responsible for making a final boundary change decision, have children or stepchildren potentially impacted by one or more of these plans. As a parent of multiple potentially impacted children, I could not make an unbiased decision for the boundary change if I were given the power of the school board members. I can confidently say that I speak for each parent in the Shakopee School District when I say that we would do anything for our children, which is why we are all here today. My question is, what controls are in place to ensure that the decisions made by the school board are not biased in any way? I vote for Plan 2B.
That was a very eloquently put statement and question, so thank you. Again, here are the controls that are in place. It's my job as a superintendent to take the best information that I can from all of our constituency, from the committee, and then to present a plan that I feel like is the best plan. And then it's the school board's decision after that to accept that plan or to make a decision on another plan. So I think that's about the best way that I can put that. This has been a really great process. I'm really proud of the participation that we've had, that it's not a district-driven process, that these people have been a part of it, that our community members have been a part of it, and I want you to know that I value every single word that's coming across our desk. I value that statement, and I can't tell you which plan that's going to be recommended, but I am going to take all this feedback to make the best recommendation.
Topic of grandfathering older children to existing schools to pacify. For the kids moving not only elementary schools but also junior highs, parents would have to drive them to school through 8th grade. This would be very difficult for working parents. In favor of 2B, Jackson is the only school practicing PBIS.
All right, thank you. Some similar comments there, but a little bit of a different twist on that. Are you queuing something up to answer that one, Dave?
I am. I spent a lot of time making this one, so I want to show it.
He's so proud of this one, too.
Okay. So you're right. How about that? You're right about that. And this is what, and this came from feedback as well. This is somebody, as much as you try to think about everything, if you have a 7th grade kid that could be in this boat, then you see it right away. We're looking at so many other things we can miss them. So this was really interesting feedback. A 5th grader goes to 6th grade, and this year goes to 7th grade. They could go to East again, or they could switch to West. Regardless of what happens, they're switching when they go to 9th grade. That would be 5 changes in 5 years for that group of kids. But if you look, that group of kids, it's actually a small number. So one of the things we've talked about is running, if it turns out this way, running a bus into those impacted areas to pick up those 7th graders for that 1 year. So the 7th graders impacted would stay at their junior high rather than go to their boundary area. So we might, and there hasn't been real pushback on that, but that's a recognition and good feedback by quite a few parents actually, that this is a really unusual situation. Because even in the current world that we're in, you go 5 to 6, one transition, 6 to 7, another, then you'd stay 8, 9, then you'd switch. You'd be those transitions over 5 years, 3 and 5 instead of 5 and 5. So that's something that's been out there that's discussed, and nobody's, I don't know, Gary, if you want to.
All I want to say is this was completely community driven, this particular scenario. We weren't thinking about this until some of those parents brought it up to us. And we feel that grandfathering in for that particular group may make sense. You can see the raw numbers at the bottom. It's with the 3 plans, but we feel like, okay, this is one we need to think about as a district, and hadn't thought about it. So that, I think, shows, some of the power of the process that we've had, that this information is completely community driven and brought to our attention.
Okay. So, yeah, thank whoever asked that one, thank you.
Yeah. Dave got to show that slide after all.
I'm not sure if somebody has an answer exactly, but we're going to anyway. Thank you to everyone who's working so hard to make the right decisions for our kids. 1, please make the choice that impacts the least amount of kiddos. With that, we ask that you please omit scenario 1A for our neighborhood. This would increase our miles traveled by 50% and double our commute time, making after-school activities very challenging and making our kids stay over 8+ hours and add plus in school time.
All right, good. That's great feedback. Thank you.
How much does having all-day kindergarten factor into space issues?
Not at all, really. All-day kindergarten is now part of the state. I can say that as the husband of somebody that's probably taught all-day kindergarten for more than anybody in Minnesota. She was teaching all-day kindergarten, my wife, in St. Paul before when there were only a handful of funded classrooms, and now she's an all-day kindergarten teacher in Apple Valley. But all-day kindergarten's a reality. I want you to know that we are a birth to senior or death district. You know, we serve students that are babies. I was holding some babies over at the family center the other day, and that was really fun. So we have to remember that, you know, we provide education for everybody in our community.
Has a cost-benefit analysis been performed? I understand that one factor is balancing the schools and demographics, but does one scenario stand out as more or less expensive? I'm especially concerned about the removal of the 6th grade center. This is such a crucial development maturation year for this age. Too old for elementary and not mature enough for junior high.
Yeah, I'll feel that one too. You know, cost analysis goes into every single move that we make as a school district. So, for instance, you know, yesterday I was looking at different things with the building project at the high school and analyzing, okay, is this a want? Is this a need? And so again, we are making decisions that we really have to do based on the criteria that we have in the district. There's not enough room at Pearson to keep doing things the way we're doing them. It produces one transition. That's another piece of feedback that we've received from the community. So, you know, yes, I've got to analyze all the costs that go into that and make it work as we restructure the budget.
This one is, are any of the proposals more favorable to the school board?
Again, that's never even come up as a piece of conversation. And the recommendation that I have will be based on the information that we've received, and that'll be it. I haven't given that any thought and won't give that any thought. I don't even know where they live.
There's two questions kind of concerned that the school board members aren't here, and wondering why they wouldn't be here as a panel listening when they are making a decision with the superintendent.
Yeah, and so we do have good representation from our school board here, but each of the other school board members that are not here are going to be watching the taped version of this, and so I can assure you of that. We'll also be having transcripts of all the questions, all the feedback, be developing a Q&A of commonly asked questions that we'll put on the website as well.
This one is rather similar, but I think it's important that where this parent is living once their voice is heard too. So it might be similar to what we've already given. Why do the same neighborhoods seem to always have to drive further to schools? Some of us are passing other schools to get to our school, and these continue to do that to the same neighborhoods. I live in Park Meadows and understand change is necessary, but at least change us to a closer school such as Sunpath so we don't get set up to change schools that next time. We cannot always be the neighborhood to move. I vote for Plan 2B.
All right, great statement again. And again, you know, I think we've discussed the criteria that's used for the decision. Thank you.
This is very similar to, it's more just feedback than a question, but we live in the area near Mystic Lake Drive and Valley View Road. Our kids were forced to go to Jackson when it opened, driving right past several other options on the way. Now, after our kids have made their our youngest daughter may have to spend 5th grade in brand new for her school. Please let her stay in her school. She knows the school, has all of her friends there, and is very used to the routine. Keeping the structure is critical in the development of children.
Thank you.
That's this neighborhood again, is that Park Meadows?
No.
No?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Right there.
Thank you.
Understanding that demographics play a role in boundary decision, it appears that it carries a heavier influence than the other selection criteria. Is this the case? On the surface, it appears that the other criteria are taking a quote back seat.
That's a great statement too. And I think if you look at the criteria, to me, one of the things that sticks out the most, especially in a couple of the plans, is how balanced things are all the way across, and not just with you know, free and reduced criteria or those pieces. Even getting those capacities to numbers that kind of make sense and let us live with it for a few years. That's a big factor. And hopefully our growth projections are where we think they are. We know we've got every proposed development included in the plans, but we don't have a crystal ball to look into what other developments may come out. But I think if you look at all of the data that's available to you, you'll see that it's not just one factor that's driving this.
Are these scenarios final? Can they be tweaked? Is looking at changes a difficult process?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that anything's final. We're taking information, and I'll say that, like that middle school piece for the 7th graders, that was something that was brought to our attention, and certainly not final, but some feedback that we received. So, again, we're presenting to you what the committee felt were the 3 best proposals in front of them.
But it is possible within those, as we look, and again, if one of them starts or we eliminate one, doing a more detailed analysis of what that development might look like. The Eric Weiss, who was the city representative on our task force, also talked about that area west of Marystown Road, maybe accelerating a little bit. So we need to look. It's when you're dealing. There were 10 before. We're down to 3. When we get less, it's easier to do that more detailed and say maybe we need to move this little bit or that. But I wouldn't say there'd be anything major that happens. But we want to hear everything that's said, take the feedback, and see if there's some adjustments that are logical in that.
Okay, this is 2 questions. One, what advantages or disadvantages do the different scenarios offer from the district perspective? And 2, will there be an attempt to have similar class sizes at each school?
So class sizes are set at the district level, and there is an effort to have similar class sizes at each of the schools. Obviously, it's impossible to do just because of the raw numbers that show up at each grade level, and we make adjustments to staffing based on those numbers. That's why we need that information early on. As far as the district stands, I don't know, as far as advantages or disadvantages to either the plans. I think we just look at the pros, the cons, the data, the feedback, and go from there.
Agreed. I think that the advantages, disadvantages, again, having somebody from the bus company there to let us know this is reasonable or it's not reasonable helped us. But when you look at that column that says what the capacity available would be after in each particular scenario, they're actually pretty close. And if you look at any one of them, if you look at the balance of kids in each, they're actually pretty close and closer than they are right now in the current situation. One factor that does come into play, and you heard it up here as well, is we get that the moving is hard. And so that's another factor that's in there, and we look and see which ones generate the least number of moves, because that seems to be, that's an important factor. And so if we're saying what's an advantage, it seems to be an advantage if there's less movement.
And also, keeping those numbers so that we can accommodate families that want to somehow stay at their own school with the intricate piece.
Question is, why did you hold this event on a night when you knew almost all the parents would be at elementary night?
Well, that's a great question, and we apologize for that, but we also want you to know there are multiple ways to give us feedback. We are going to hold another night like this in October, so no final decisions are going to be made tonight. And, we apologize. There's only a limited number of evenings that we can get people together, and no matter when we schedule it, something's going on somewhere, but our apologies for that.
Okay, I got to tell you, I'm sorry about that. We put these dates out quite a while ago, actually, as we looked at the process, and we really, it's not lip service. I want to hear, and Gary wants to hear, and the board wants to hear what people have to say. So please, have people come who miss. I don't know if there's a conflict on October 23rd. I'm hoping not.
No, and people have given some really powerful, useful statements tonight that are incredibly helpful. So thank you.
So we're trying. Sorry.
When you split up elementary and junior highs, that is difficult. Is there any way to have a straight split, 3 to 3 to the junior high?
So, sending
Is it the feeder we're talking about?
no, I think, yeah, feeder elementaries into the junior highs, yeah.
That would be the plan right now is, if you look at each of the scenarios, I think it's on the junior high page. In the lower left corner of that page, it'll show what the proposed feeder, let me get to one of those. Oops, like this one. See in that lower left corner, it actually says, down here, EJH, it would actually be East Middle School at that time, would be fed in this scenario by Eagle Creek, Pearson, and Red Oak. West Middle School would be fed by Jackson, Sunpath, and Sweden. Did I understand that question right?
Yeah, I think that was the question, yeah.
Dave, in that scenario, Pearson, half of Pearson goes to west, half goes to east. That
This is the question
was
around.
part of the question too, because
Okay.
it's not
So-
a total feeder.
Yes. So, all right. So let's talk about that for a second. Pearson, right here, some of that would feed in this scenario East Middle School, we'll call it, okay? But there are kids that are in the right across the street from the west parking lot. Actually, they'd be right over there.
Right over there, yep.
That would be feeding into east. Now, that would still be within the current walking distance policy, and they could, but this is the way it's set up right now. The kids that live right there in this area walk to west. Is that right? So one of the things we're looking at, and actually this was also from some parent feedback, and I don't know if maybe it's the person who asked this question. We are re-evaluating that. I think what we looked at multiple year, how many kindergarten, first grade, and rolled these years up year after year to see what that would do to the populations at east and west, 4 years out, 5 years out, 6 years out, and saw that we are going to have to revisit that and possibly look at it being a true feeder system where those kids that even if they live right across, that they would be going to east. And that, it seems like that would be the preferred for kids. You know, they're with their friends and all of a sudden we say, now you're going to walk here. So that's one, and I'll go back to that other question. They say, are these locked in? That would be one that we need to do a little more study on that and make sure we're good, that we might say, you know what, it is a pure feeder, and even though they're walking to west right now, they would be going to east. They might say, it's across my park, I can throw a ball from my house to that school and I'm going to the other one, which still is not that far. They might think that's the better option for them, but I think from our standpoint, that area is one we're going to take a closer look at. Is that, okay.
All
I
right.
forgot to add that it says, I vote for 2B.
All right, thank you.
Will Pearson have an earlier start than other elementary schools? What will the impact be on busing?
Yeah, so the scenarios that we have would have, again, an equal number of early start and later start elementaries, and we do have a slide for that one. There we go. So Pearson would join the early start schools there to have 3 and 3.
Yeah, and I would say that's the current, I mean, it seems logical.
Likely. I mean, again, we're not locked in on it, but if we're talking about transportation costs, from my standpoint, it's very highly likely that I would recommend that they have an early start.
Do any of the schools currently support a school-wide Title I program? How will the proposed changes impact those programs given the desire to have a distributed, free, and reduced population?
I believe, and you guys are going to have to help me if I get this wrong, that 40% is to be school-wide Title I. Then it's even an option, right? You don't have to become, is that right? School-wide Title I. So I don't think that's the direction we would go with school-wide Title I. We can still offer a full slate of intervention programming without being school-wide Title I. You still get the Title I funds. You can use them to support kids. And so I don't think there's an impact that way. Any of you guys want to have something better to add?
Pretty much sum it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Good question.
So,
I don't think
sorry,
there's anything.
because I want to, can you read that one more time again?
Do any of the schools currently support a school-wide Title I program? How will the proposed changes impact those programs given the desire to have a distributed, free, and reduced population?
So let me just pick on the verbiage of that question a little bit. A school-wide Title I program. Title I is not designed to support an entire school. It supports a certain number of students for additional help for a school. So again, but we also get district title funds that we can distribute around across the district in an equitable way to serve our students right now.
For the criteria/parameters slide, how would you rank them in importance?
It's a great question. I bet you were waiting for my answer, weren't you? I think they all are factors that are important in the decision-making process. I really think it's impossible to rank them. I think they're all considered as, again, we present what we think is the best plan.
And I'd say from a pure numbers standpoint, right, we're trying not to go over capacity. That's the driver here, is that we're too crowded right now. So this, with a recognition that we're going to be growing going forward as well, if you forced me to, I was a high school math teacher too. You want to know my whole life story before we get it out there? But that's got to be, if I had to, that was the starting point, is making sure that we alleviate the pressure that's on those schools right now.
Yeah, building capacity is a driver, obviously.
What is the expected outcome of this session? Will there be more details to review and provide feedback on at the next listening session in October? When can we expect these outputs to come out? P.S. I appreciate all of the hard work and detail that you all have put into this. I don't envy you, and thanks for your transparency. P.S.S. I vote to be.
Well, thank you for the PS first. Again, we recognize how difficult this is, and we really appreciate what's happening tonight. What you've heard and what you're seeing is exactly what we were hoping that the outcome of this meeting would be. To get more information, to hear what you had to say, to do it in a controlled, reasonable way, and I couldn't be more thrilled than what the outcome is. So this information is all going to be used to help guide us along with the other information that we're receiving from the community. And as far as the next session, I can say that we're not going to make a final recommendation or anything prior to the next session. We need to get more feedback from people, and then right after that is when I'll be making a recommendation to the school board. Not that next, but at the next board meeting after that.
And I would say another example might be that piece I just showed about the junior high and middle school walkers around Pearson and that feeder, that I would think between now and then, that we would want to put something out that says, hey, this is different for the junior highs. We're looking at that. Maybe if we have more guidance around what it would look like for that group of 7th graders that might have multiple moves, that we talk about that, and that we start to narrow the number of unknowns, and maybe we talk a little bit more. And I'm not, Garrett and I did not consult on this, so I'm not trying to tell my boss what we're going to do. So if we looked at that intra-district transfer piece again and said, yes, that's what we're going to do. So to try to narrow in and be responsive to what we're hearing. And so even we gave a couple examples here tonight about analysis or things we were able to look at as a result of the feedback. So we will take it back. There's somebody in here taking notes on everything. We'll have all the cards. We'll see what it might lead to and try to get that out as soon as we can. We have about 5 weeks till that next session, and we really will be posting and making sure that if there is new information that comes out, that people see that as soon as possible.
And I will say this, after the next session, we can't put off the decision because there's too much work that needs to occur before we implement these things. So, we need to do a lot of stuff, as you've heard tonight, to be ready for this the next fall.
Do you have statistics on the number of students who are transported by parents versus students who ride the bus to and from school? If so, do you take into consideration one's residential proximity to the proposed new school zones for parents that have to transport their students due to work schedules? I vote against Plan 1A.
Great. It's good feedback on statistics about who's driving the kids to school. Really hard to track that down, especially since, who rides the bus each day varies. So I think we'd have to look at who's on the bus every day. And we could literally count cars, I guess, in the carpool, but it's an interesting
So
question.
there'd be I'm thinking, so it's a parent that wants before or after school care that's driving their child before the bus would come.
Or
That'd be
just
one.
somebody dropping off.
Or somebody who is enrolling outside of their attendance area and wants to drive as well. I don't know if we have a good.
We could sure look at the before and after school numbers, but they don't necessarily indicate somebody that is doing it because of transportation reasons. So that's one for us to think about. That's good feedback.
I think this may have been answered, but I'm not sure. Will kids who are already using the intra-school transfer be considered to stay at their current schools? Thanks for all of their hard work.
You're welcome. First and the last part. I would assume that, students that are in place for intra-district transfer would continue at the school that they're at.
Yeah. That was in the one slide, that was kind of, we're calling it current best thinking. So it's not a locked in deal, but that would be something that maybe we want to talk about more with our school board as well between now and the 23rd. Maybe we have more information on that one at that time.
Yeah. And those are numbers that we have.
It seems like most people want their kids to be close to school, but most of the proposals are heavily weighted towards social engineering. Why is there a high emphasis on social engineering? For example, is there a state regulation you are trying to satisfy? By the way, I'm for 1A or 2A. 2B would move my kids across 169 and further away.
Okay. And again, social engineering is a pretty tough way to put what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep balance. There are no regulations or state things that benefit us in any of these scenarios over any other scenario.
And I think there's some challenges here as well. I do understand the question. And this came up a number of times. Well, I hadn't thought of this before either, but if you look at that slide, I showed you the history, and I think it's on that handout as well. Almost, I can't say for sure, but I know in this one, every one of our attendance areas crosses 169 right now. Every one of our schools has kids north and south of 169. So that's nothing different for us. Another challenge is when you think about how much we're going to drive, there's only 650 kids here. The other kids are far away. There's going to be some far driving by somebody just because of where the kids are and where our schools are. When you put the other factors into play, having our schools look like our community, where the development is going to be, where the kids are right now, it's not this tight arrangement of kids centered around our schools. It just didn't happen that way.
All right, next question.
Why wouldn't Pearson just go to west if it is across street from west? Demographics should not be issued here as 3 feeder schools are already demographically balanced.
And again, that could be the solution.
And let me say this as well. When I was talking about that was part of what the Pearson boundary would be. There's kids on the other side of that Pearson area that are closer to east. So it's not you don't take it from Pearson Elementary to west. It's where the kids live, if I understand the question right. Yeah, so some of those kids would actually be closer to east. It's just that one area right across the street there.
You guys have done a great job with the questions, by the way. We'll make sure to get you a round of applause at the end.
Is there a projected timeline on how long these scenarios would last?
Again, yeah, what we looked at is our hope is that these scenarios, because of the capacities that we've set, will last 5 to 7 years.
There's a little feedback on here that I'm not going to read because it's not prevalent to what we're doing here tonight, but just want to add that our vote is 2B, and we're currently parents of the 7th grader.
Okay,
But I'll
thank
read
you.
it for you guys.
Yep, we're going to read everything on there, even if it doesn't pertain to tonight, we're going to read it.
Just more mention of PBIS program, seeing so much positive growth and want this all schools to be equal, not less. What's that one?
Great feedback, thank you.
Is there consideration of the time kids will spend on the bus to and from school? According to GPS, in option 1A, our neighborhood, located south of 42 and off 83, would add 5 minutes and several stoplights for our students' route without taking into account the bus stops along the route to pick up other kids. I prefer my kids spend as little time on the bus as possible, considering our neighborhood is bordering the outside edges of the district. Because of this, I vote for 2A or 2B. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you. And again, yeah, the transportation department was involved in the process and will continue to be. So we'll continue to have conversations about bus routes and length of rides. One more.
Okay, if one of the
Perfect timing, sorry.
If one of the most important criteria is building capacity, why are neighborhoods adjacent to subpath not slated to go to that school despite having 107 open seats currently? Vote 2B.
All right, great point again. Well, you want me to close it up, Dave? All right, first of all, can we have a round of applause for our community members and parents that helped us out here tonight? I want you to all give yourselves a virtual pat on the back, or you can pat your neighbor on the back for participating tonight. This is really what the Shakopee schools are all about. See, I see people physically doing it. We want to be education forward in this district, and if we are putting those two words out there, we have to live that. And we can't do that without you. Our job is to work with our community so that we're best serving our students. I'm absolutely aware of the fact that all 3 of these plans that are still remaining are going to be tough. You know, whichever one is going to be hard for some people to swallow. But I want you to know that we're doing this in a very thoughtful process. We're taking in all the input that all of you have. And again, I just feel blessed to be in this school district because, you know, we're turning some corners here. And as hard as this is, we've got to do things that are for the best of our kids. That's our job as parents and our job as a school district. So again, I want to thank Dave. Dave is an absolute guru at this, and he has worked so hard. So thank you. The only guy I know that sleeps with school boundary maps under his pillow, which is driving his wife crazy. Anybody else? I want to thank everybody here out west for providing the space for us and making everything work great for us, and our school board members that are here and that are also going to be listening later. So, anything else, Dave?
I would just say, we talked about this, but make sure if you have something, let us know. We really are, we want to hear it. And we also know that when we hear it, not everybody's going to get what they want. And I, personally, I like everybody to be happy, and so this is really, I know it's tough for you. It's tough for us as well. We get it. We're in it. I was an elementary principal as well. I get it. I want the kids to be happy. I want the parents to be happy. Gary was an elementary principal. He wants the same thing. We know not everybody's going to be happy with this, and it makes it tough. We know long term why we have to do it. Short term, there's going to be some pain to be had by somebody around here because of that change. But it will be good in the long run. Call, email, come on October 23rd, or whatever, please.
And again, thank you all for coming. The big maps are in the hallway. A few of us will hang around if there are any other questions afterwards. I'm writing anything else down. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.